Yes, sir. Sir, it's I'll just WhatsApp you again, sir. It's there in that. I'll just send it to you, sir.
The links have been reshared, so both email and.
Yes, sir. No, you just your email ID you can put, sir, but I've sent you the code. Yes, sir, yes, sir. The code and the password is there, sir. Yes. Anisa, welcome. Mr. I think somebody can call up Admiral Amit Vikram. He is facing some issues. Shreya can call him up.
Yes, sir.
Anisa, can you hear me, sir?
So should we start? I think we are
Yep, we'll
at
just
time.
Nishtha, we can start. Yeah, please join. Good afternoon, Admiral, sir. Thank you for joining us, sir. Admiral, sir, can you hear me, sir? Admiral Vikram, sir, can you hear me?
Yes, Commander Das, I can hear you now.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Thank you, sir. Thank you for joining us, sir.
Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you.
Good afternoon, sir. Good afternoon, sir. Nishtha, we can start, please.
All right.
Just a minute, my audio is little low. Just one sec. you hear me, Commander Das?
Yes, sir.
Hello?
I can hear you, sir. Loud and clear, sir. Perfect.
Should I be starting?
Yes, sir. We're starting now, sir.
We'll start. So I'll just go ahead.
Please start, Nishta.
So welcome everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today for a webinar on the occasion of World Maritime Day 2023. In today's webinar, our participants who are majorly the MRC fellows will discuss the importance of enhancing the maritime domain in today's world. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Nishtha and I handle the communications and advocacy work at MRC. And it is
Am I
always
supposed to start, Commander? I'm not very clear. I'm not able to hear you. Hello?
Can you hear me, sir? Admiral, sir, can you hear me?
Yes.
We can hear you, sir.
Should I be starting now?
Yes, sir. We have started. We'll tell you when your turn comes, sir.
Okay, fine. Thank you.
Nishta, go ahead.
Right. So it's worth noting that World Maritime Day is a global observance day, which was created by United Nations via the International Maritime Organization. In today's webinar, the participants are going to highlight the maritime industry's contribution to the world economy, especially in shipping. Some of the key objectives of the webinar are to emphasize the significance of shipping safety, maritime security, and the maritime environment. MRC is committed to advancing knowledge and understanding of the oceans. Through its research initiatives, MRC aims to address the challenges facing maritime ecosystem, promote sustainable practices, and contribute to the evidence-based decision-making for ocean management. Now, I'd like to call upon Dr. Commander Arnav Das to take over and share his remarks and introduce and welcome the illustrious panel of dignitaries that we have with us today. Thank you.
Thank you, Nishta. As you mentioned, today is an important day, and we did want to also have an event and propagate. I mean, as you're all aware, we are working on the underwater domain awareness framework. And largely what is important in today's world is the digital transformation in the underwater domain. And it is also important, I mean, although we all know 75% of the earth is water, but the importance given to water is really not what it deserves. So we as an organization are dedicated to the underwater domain, and because large part of the resources and the threats come from the underwater space, whether it is a marine or the freshwater systems. So even on today's World Maritime Day, we would like to take an opportunity to showcase the different dimensions of the underwater space. And as you rightly said, we have our fellows who will be showcasing their work. These fellows have worked for a long time, and they have a good understanding of what work they are doing. And the MRC works on 5 pillars. One is research, skilling, academic courses, innovation, and policy. So all the fellows you will see, they come from diverse disciplines, right from technology to liberal arts to international relations, and they will be talking about different aspects. And I think it is a very good uh, demonstration of how different disciplines are required to make a reasonable contribution. So we have a very distinguished guest list also. We have Rear Admiral Amit Vikram sir, who had a very distinguished career in the Indian Navy, and post the Indian Navy, now he is in a very senior position in the academia. So our thought was to involve the academia, because our young generation or young India must be aware what are the new opportunities and what are the areas where real world contribution is very, very important. So with that intention, we requested Admiral Sir to join us. He is the campus director at the Akurdi campus of the D.Y. Patil Institute, group of institutes. So, sir, thank you very much for agreeing to be part of this event today. And we also have Mr. Anish Pankhania from the IT industry. He represents Capgemini at a very senior position. And we are extremely grateful because, again, when we talk about digital transformation, the IT industry has to play a very, very important role, and the corporates have to also recognize the importance and drive this. So we would like to be a nodal agency to sensitize and then engage and to sustain this whole initiative. So thank you, Admiral Vikram sir and Mr. Anish Pakhania to have agreed to join us this afternoon. So I would now request Admiral sir to kindly give his directions to this event and to the large number of uh, people who are also joining us on YouTube, and also the recordings will be available going beyond this. Admiral sir, I would request you to kindly take over.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you, Commander Arnav Das, Director, MRC Pune. As always, every time when I meet you, always I am a fan of you because the initiative and the 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 focus which you've taken on the maritime domain awareness, that is something which is the need of our country and the nation because we are maritime nation, so to say. In fact, in my current assignment as campus director, ladies and gentlemen, Commander Das came to my campus and he enlightened on this aspect of a new word for the students, so to say. And we are now looking forward as to how we can also include our students, because they are multi-stream in my campus, and how they can be part of this MRC to take his initiative, your initiatives ahead. I'm very keenly looking that my students of the campus should also take part similar kind of forums, and they also should take the way forward. As I think today, the various syndicates will be presenting their part of research. Um, Today being the World Maritime Day, I would like to first greet all the panelists and the guests on this webinar, the greetings. Today also happens to be Anand Chaturdashi and of course Eid Milad. So again, the greetings on these two occasions as well. We all are celebrating the Visarjan of Lord Ganesh today. International Maritime Organization headquartered in London has decided that the theme for this year, for this particular important day called World Maritime Day, is Marpol at 50. Our commitment goes on. That's a tagline. And going further into, I thought let me just talk a minute or so about this Marpol, which is actually an acronym for maritime pollution. And Marpol, in short, is for the International Convention for the Prevention of Pollution emanating from ships, which is called Marpol Convention, is one of the most important international treaties governing the marine pollution. And it was adopted way back by the International Maritime Organization somewhere in October 1983. And today, this year, it culminates about 50 odd years. Of course, the original Marpol was signed in Feb 73, but did not get its right effect. And hence, the current treaty is a hybrid of 1973 Convention and the 1978 Protocol, which took effect, as I said, on October 1983. It's a critical international instrument for the protection of the marine environment and the coastal communities. And it places an obligation on not only on the ship owners and the operators, but even the entire the maritime nations to adhere to the regulations outlined in its annexes. The flag states, the port states also play an important role in ensuring compliance and enforcing that these regulations are implemented to its totality. The primary purpose, as I said, of the Marpol is to prevent pollution of the marine environment from ships, both whether it is accidental pollution or it is pollution from the routine operations. Over the years, of course, Marpol has been amended to strengthen pollution prevention measures and to keep pace with the advancement in technology and the environmental awareness across the globe. And these amendments reflect the international community's commitment in reducing the marine pollution and, of course, safeguarding the health of the world's oceans. The focus for this year, as I said in the beginning, is the MARPOL in the 50 years now, highlights on protection of the environment from the pollution at seas and oceans, and of course, how to reduce the plastic litter, which is, I think, across the world, the problem. We always think about that as if the problem is only in our country or in our state or in our town, but I think even at the seas. And how to save the marine life from these hazards, innovation in, of course, clean marine fuel production, and how to reduce the carbon footprints in the maritime domain. And I think it is in line with the mandate, which is for COP27 and 28. When I was going through the concept note of this webinar, the very next, the very relevant question that arises is why is so much importance to maritime trade? And I can figure out some 5 or 6 bullets and give a bit of amplification on that. Maritime trade remains a cornerstone in the global economy, and its continued growth and sustainability are essential for the well-being of not only of the nations, but of course, or their populations. So, in my sense, the first very important aspect comes uh, in terms of the maritime world trade and the sea routes is the volume of the trade. The maritime trade accounts for the vast majority of global trade by volume. And according to the United Nations Conference on Trade and Development report, over 80% of the global trade by volume and 70% by value is transported by seas. This includes a wide range of goods such as consumer products, machinery, energy sources, and of course, raw materials. If I take from our nation's perspective, 90% of our trade is through maritime routes, as we are traditionally a maritime nation, and by virtue of our geographical location, having 7,500 odd nautical miles of our coastline, 1,300 odd islands, and with a lot of pride to say that a nation is named as per our nation. An ocean is named as per our name of our nation. The second aspect comes is in terms of containerization. And one of the most significant development in maritime trade is the widespread use of containers and the standardization of shipping containers for the purpose of loading and unloading of the cargoes. And that is what it is making it more efficient in transporting. And of course, as we say, that the trade through sea routes is always cost effective. Ports around the world have adopted to handle these standardized containers, enabling the rapid movement of goods. In our nation, if we take it, we got 12 major ports under center and 200 other private and state government ports. The third, historically very significant, geographically very significant aspect comes is in terms of key trade routes. And from time immemorial, major maritime trade routes are still relevant today. The Suez Canal, the Panama Canal, and the key the choke points like the Strait of Hormuz, which, if we take in our case, in our case, takes about 65% of our oil import, comes through that particular route. We take the Strait of Malacca, about 50% of our trade passes through it. Are critical for global trade. The sea lanes are very, very critical for entire global trade. 200% plus $1 billion of trade happens through Gulf of Aden to and from India. The opening of this expanded Panama Canal in 2016 is now allowing larger vessels to pass through, and it has got a significant impact on the trade routes. So I would like to here now highlight some of the historical relevance of the trade routes as a passing reference, because this itself is a topic for a webinar, so to say, which has helped in thriving of the civilizations in last more than 4,000 years. Nearly 4,000 years ago, the old early civilizations of Greeks, Egyptians, Persians, Phoenicians, our Indus Valley civilization are known to have used the sea trade. They got documented proofs of that. Rig Ved, which is considered to be about 4,000 years old, has got verses which have got depiction of Lord Varun, whom we, in the Navy we worship. And all seafarers, they actually worship Lord Varun, having the knowledge of this ocean routes. Or the verses on merchants who frequent into sea for gains. Even Atharvaved Chanakya has quoted about the sea trade and is given the depiction of the superintendents of the ships in that in Sanskrit. So I think the oceans have played a very significant role from time immemorial. So in my sense, maritime trade routes in old times were essential for exchange of not only goods and culture, but of course ideas and connect between the people from different uh, civilizations. And world civilization actually grew with this kind of transportation of people and the goods and the cultures. These ancient maritime trade routes played a very crucial role in developing the civilization, what we actually uh, feel it today. And not only they spread the culture, but they, of course, shaped the world's history. The tales of sea exploration of Vasco da Gama and the Columbus have been read and heard by all of us in our student time in the books of history. Of course, these Western explorers were glorified beyond a limit in my own perspective. Uh, these routes played a very crucial role in shaping, as I said, the history and, of course, facilitating the economic development of the globe. They laid the foundation for the interconnected global trade network that continue to influence our world today. So, of course, this is, as I said, can be always talked in a separate kind of webinar, and I know Commander Das keep on arranging these kind of discussions time and again. Now the word is the beauty of the thing. Time is that the word is now trying to recreate these time-tested routes, whether it's a Silk Route or recently in that concluding days of the G20 summit, the India, Middle East, Europe economic corridor is being talked about. And if you go into the old times, in my sense, the similar route was called as incense routes, because somewhere in 1800 BC, navigators traveled along the coast between the Indian subcontinents, and the spices were mainly traded. The southern part of the Arabian Peninsula was traded for these incense products, and um, the camel-driven caravans were taking these products through land routes in the Arabian desert and to the place called Petra, which is today is the word Hattusite in Jordan. And thereafter, the important commercial roads used to open between Egypt and the Mesopotamia. So these something similar is now trying to be recreated, so to say. Similarly, Mediterranean trade routes or the South China trade routes, and they are all now getting scripted from the old civilization, what we had in our in our history. So there is no doubt that from time immemorial, Indian Ocean and the strategic location of our nation, Bharat, majorly influenced and attracted the whole world from thousands of years. The next important part which comes in terms of maritime domain is the largest ports in terms of size and the bulk they handle. And some of the world's largest busiest ports are hubs for maritime trade, which can be Shanghai port, Singapore port, or Rotterdam port, and so on and so forth, which handle vast amount of cargo and serve as a key transshipment points for goods traveling between the regions. The next aspect which I would like to probably highlight is about on the aspect of bulk cargo. The bulk carriers continue to transport commodities like coal, iron ore, grains, oil in large quantities. And these ships are crucial for the global supply of essential resources. And probably the last part which I would like to touch upon is the energy security, which is always talked about in a great length. The tankers are responsible for transporting the majority of the world crude oil and, of course, the LNG. And the energy sector heavily relies on maritime trade for the distribution of these resources. So, in brief, our energy requirements are largely dependent on maritime trade. So I would like to end by saying that environmental sustainability is an increasingly important consideration in maritime trade. The challenges relate to not only just environmental sustainability, but of course security and the infrastructure development and the technological development for to ensure smooth functioning of this vital industry, which is through our oceans and the seas. With this, I would like to close my comments, and I would like to once again thank you, Commander Arnab Das. Jai Hind.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, sir, for your remarks and your comments on the occasion of World Maritime Day. Now, going forward, we are going to have 6 presentations by the MRC fellows on various topics ranging from maritime, from MSP to sediment classification. The presentations are for 15 minutes each, and after the presentation, each of the presentations, I would request the presenter to vacate the stage for the next presenter. Also, I would request other guests and the other dignitaries and participants who have joined us today to keep their microphones on mute when the presentations are being made, so as to keep our presenters away from any form of distraction. Now, I would like to call upon J. Catherine, who heads the publication and research domain at MRC, to make a presentation. Catherine, you can take it over.
Thank you, Nishta. I'll share my screen. Good evening, everyone. It's an honor today for me to talk about marine spatial planning, given the context in which our country is moving today. So I am J. Catherine. I'm the Research and Publication Coordinator at Maritime Research Center, Pune. Today, I'm going to talk about marine spatial planning, which is going to be the essential factor for achieving our blue economic goals and sustainable ocean management. So we at India have already been doing sporadically a lot of developments, but following and aligning with the national global trends of this emerging concept of marine spatial planning, India is also taking several steps. And in this presentation today, I will talk about the basic components of MSP, and then also give a brief about what MRC is taking up to realize the concept of marine spatial planning. So I'll talk about the ocean system, the challenges, the global challenges, why the MSP is needed, what are the global developments in MSP, what are the various steps of MSP, and why does Indian Ocean region and India need MSP, and where does marine spatial planning fall when we talk about blue economy, and also why an ecosystem-based management, and how MSP and UDA can bring together the desired results, and what are the recommendations, and I'll conclude my presentation after that. So as Admiral and Sir already mentioned about how ocean system is such an important and a system which hasn't been dealt with the way it should have been. It is one of the largest and ecosystem which regulates climate, supports life, and provides a plethora of resources, which we haven't explored to the extent that they are present and that we have the reach to explore. There are various biophysical variations, and it plays vital roles in climate regulation, food provision, and provides a lot of biodiversity, such as coral reefs, mangroves, and coastal ecosystems. Even though the ocean is so vast, our human activities have impacted them in a significant way because of our overfishing habits, the pollution, the resultant climate change impacts such as ocean acidification, rising sea levels, etc. At present, we have various conservation plans and implementations, such as marine protected areas for preserving biodiversity, sustainable fisheries to manage the resources responsibly, and various climate mitigation measures. So what are the global challenges that we are facing today? Of course, first, the global population, which is projected to reach 10 billion by 2050, will bring with it unsustainable demands and environmental externalities. Unsustainable because of the lifestyle that we are moving towards is kind of not sustainable with the resources that are available. So it is unsustainable. Therefore, the marine ecosystem is under severe threat from this unchecked use and pollution. If we have to sum up the crisis that we are facing as humans, it will be the food and energy crisis. So how will MSP, marine spatial planning, cater to solving these global challenges? So what is MSP? MSP is a public process, as in it involves multiple stakeholders at multiple levels, particularly the government at the center. And this is going to be an ecosystem-based approach to plan the allocation of resources, spatially in the ocean region. Plus, it will have a temporal component. And then why do we need MSP? To avoid conflicts. Because the ocean-based industries are also increasing, the chances of conflicts, the chances of overuse, the chances of destruction of marine biodiversity, sensitive areas. So all of that needs to be taken into consideration. That's why we need marine spatial planning. So the benefits will, of course, be we will be avoiding a lot of conflicts. We will have a lot of collaboration with our neighboring countries. We will have a synergy of between different ministries and departments. We will have more productivity. We will have less cost with respect to information generation or resource management. So how do we implement MSP? So in order to implement MSP on a global scale, there have been a lot of developments. At present, around 100 countries have been planning and implementing MSP at various stages. So it all began actually in 1970s when MSP as a rudimentary idea was introduced to conserve marine hotspots. But then as the idea developed, it started to encompass various other components of marine ecosystem, because the biodiversity will definitely be impacted by human activities. Therefore, it was only natural that we ultimately reach here where marine spatial planning does not only concern about the diversity, but also how the activities that are affecting the diversity needs to be managed. So marine spatial planning officially got a recognition when UNESCO's Intergovernmental Oceanographic Commission released the document Marine Spatial Planning, a step-by-step approach. And then the Convention for Biological Diversity did further work on how MSP can be implemented in the context of biological diversity. Then European Union released a directive to implement its own marine spatial planning projects. And then in 2017, Intergovernmental Oceanographic Commission and DG of European Union released the MSP roadmap and MSP global initiatives. And then again, consequently, in 2021, they released a guideline for marine spatial planning. And then in 2021, we had an Ocean Action Commission, Ocean Action to 2020 group forming for sustainable ocean economic planning. And in 2022, the World Bank released a toolkit for marine spatial planning to help the countries that are starting their journey to understand what MSP constitutes. And other than that, the IOC has been a technical partner with various other multi-governmental organizations and global agencies such as UNEP, GED, etc., to develop to incorporate MSPs in their other projects. So, what are the broad steps that that's being promoted in MSP? It's pre-planning, which involves data collection, a visioning of objectives, mapping of the resources, then zoning them, and then implementing regulatory frameworks, legal frameworks, and then MSP is also adaptive in nature, which requires periodic revisions. So once we get some results, and if they don't align with our objectives or the ideal vision that we have, we are supposed to go back and revise our tenants and then come back with a better plan. So this is a reiterative process, and this is what MSP constitutes overall. Indian Ocean region. So at present, if we are talking from the perspective of India, we need to be concerned about with what's happening at our own coast and also in the Indian Ocean region. So Indian Ocean region is the third largest ocean with diverse population, languages, religions, and economic development. It has major trade routes. It's carrying 50% of the world's container ships and 1/3 of all shipments. And also, it's interesting to note that 15% of the Indian Ocean region is covered by continental shelf. As many of you will already know, this is rich in various resources, oil resources, gravel soil, and all the other major resources of human interest are present in the continental shelf. So this is a very important factor in Indian Ocean region. Indian Ocean region is being subdivided into 5 subregions, and it's loosely governed by guided by regional forums such as ASEAN, SAARC, and IORA. IORA actually has a special significance here because it has been able to bring together a lot of IOR region countries, almost 23 of them, to promote coordination and economic development. So IORA can be an excellent platform to initiate MSP process when it comes to a regional development. And because it's an interconnected ocean space, one activity in one country will definitely have an impact in the neighboring country. So IORA could be a platform to initiate an MSP process, a regional MSP process, to overcome geographic, geopolitical, and geostrategic differences, conflicts, competition, etc. So this would promote coherence and synergy of plan, and it's an excellent opportunity for knowledge sharing, cooperation, capacity building, trust building. Already in the Western Indian Ocean region, countries such as Kenya, Mauritius, Seychelles have implemented MSP initiatives, and it is high time that we also look at something more practical when it comes to MSP. And so I will conclude this slide saying that Indian Ocean region is at a very important juncture where marine spatial planning needs to be formalized and institutionalized. So MSP in India. India has already been doing a lot of ocean management based coastal management projects, but we haven't had any success with regards to an integrated plan or project. So to give a context, India's exclusive economic zone spans over 2 million square kilometers. And as Admiral Sir mentioned, it has 12 major ports managed by the central government and almost approximately 200 non-major ports. India is managing almost around 1,400 million tons of cargo every year. This is a recent number. And we have 4 million fisherfolk and coastal communities dependent on the coastal economy. The steps that India has been taking timeline-wise will be India recently launched the Sagarmala project, which is to modernize, to enhance the connectivity and industrialization of our ports, and develop our 14 coastal economic zones. And then came the coastal regulation zone notification, wherein the Ministry of Earth Sciences and National Center for Coastal Research has developed coastal zone management plans to conserve and protect the coastal and marine areas. And then we had the Ocean Mission in 2021 with a budget of around 4,000 crores for 5 years to explore our undersea, to explore our underwater, and to survey the biodiversity, to survey the resources available, etc. And then we have a collaboration with the United Nations for marine litter reduction through their Clean Seas program. And in September 2020, India drafted the first blue economic policy, India's first blue economic policy framework. And in 2021, we had a collaboration with Norway. We started a collaboration with Norway to develop MSP for Lakshadweep and Puducherry area with an investment of 8 to 10 crores per annum for 5 years. And the recently concluded G20 meeting also paid special importance to the blue earth-based economy, the blue ocean-based economy. So that would definitely encompass more marine spatial planning projects in the future. So what is this relationship between blue economy and MSP? Blue economy actually refers to the various industries, emerging industries, existing industries, the collaboration, the synchronizing of them to make sure that the economic productivity from these from ocean-based industries is optimum, we increase that by collaborating with various industries, by financing it, by making sure they are at their most highest productive level. And at the same time, making sure that our environment is not degraded, we are not damaging the environment, we are making a resilient plan for that. And how can MSP help blue economy? So marine spatial planning, as I said, is a public process. It involves a lot of stakeholders. It involves planning. It involves extensive planning. And it involves reiterative revisions. So marine spatial planning will lay an important and vital foundation for sustainable blue economy. So initially, an MSP can be sector driven. It can be for individual sectors or could be for individual places. But then it needs to be integrated with the larger blue economic plan. So that's how marine spatial planning will make sure that we implement blue economy and we get the advantages and benefits from blue economy, the socio-economic advantages properly. And MSP also helps blue economy to become transparent and predictable. So we can have, so if we have a better plan, of course, it will invite investments, attract investments in a more predictable manner. And it'll make sure that the process is transparent. And also, MSP involves making proper legislative and hierarchical structures so that it is the blue economy plans are enabled on ground. Finally, the end goal is that we have socioeconomic development, livelihood enhancement, and environmental sustainability. So in line with creating a lot of jobs, in line with increasing the capacity and capability of our youth, the marine spatial planning strategy will make sure that the blue economy, India lives up to the potential of its blue economic resources. So another important factor that I want to stress in this presentation is the ecosystem-based approach. Why do we need an ecosystem-based approach? So as you can see in the diagram, first we consider single species or single sectors, and then multiple. And then we consider the entire system in an ecosystem-based approach. So ecosystem-based approach actually includes everything. So that every domain that is influencing the productivity or the economic outcomes. So the end goal is that we have a healthy, productive, and resilient system for human needs. And at present, it's only 0.8% of the ocean is designated as MPAs, marine protected areas. So that kind of makes it even more urgent that all our plans be ecosystem based. And to understand the complex interrelation so that we don't disturb it. Because because humans are also a part of this ecosystem-based approach. So our actions need to be monitored in a more serious fashion. And make sure that our impact on sea floor integrity, marine food webs are to the minimum, or the best case, the best thing that we can do is make sure that we don't influence them as much as possible. And also it's important to know that when we talk about ecosystem-based approach, marine environment is actually it is looked at as an integrated component along with the land-based activities and ecosystem. Because the pollution, the agricultural pollution, the domestic pollution, the other wastewater that finally ends up in the ocean also leads to the deterioration of the biodiversity, impacts the ocean-based industries, fisheries, etc. So ecosystem-based approach is the best way to go, and MSP is actually an ecosystem-based approach. I would like to present a case study about Latvia's ecosystem-based MSP. So wherein they, as you can see in the diagram, these are the four steps they've been following. They've taken stock of the environment, the resources, the culture, the security, etc. They've made the strategy, and then they created scenarios. And then the solution, like what are the actions that they have they are going to propose. And the first step would, of course, involve mapping and assessment of the marine ecosystem services, and then and involving all the stakeholders, and then also making sure that the strategic environmental assessment has been taken place. So all of this will make sure that your marine spatial planning is comprehensive, integrated, and resilient. So in Latvia's case, they have done benthic habitat maps, vulnerability assessments, and ecological impacts to make sure that the synergy between land and marine activities are assessed and taken into consideration when making the plans. Conservation species and habitats have been identified. Ecosystem goods and vulnerabilities are also being mapped to make an informed decision. So overall, the checklist, these are from the global guidelines. The checklist is, you look at the process, if it's inclusive, integrative, and iterative. You look at the content, if it's spatially sound, it's place-based, it's ecosystem-based, and also backed by proper knowledge. And when it comes to implementation, we have to check if it's endorsed, financed, and if we have the capacity, or we are making sure that we have the capacity to implement all the projects. So finally, how does MSP benefit from the underwater domain awareness? So MRC has been doing a lot of work in making sure that different components of MSP is being addressed to make sure that the underwater domain awareness, which is an inclusive and comprehensive framework, aligns with marine spatial planning. So we've been working on technology development for mapping. We've been also making sure that the digital transformation for data collection and management and community engagement is sound. We have worked on we have worked for softwares for coastal communities to make sure that seaweed and shrimp farming is coordinated, and it's the coastal community is digitally informed, so that the productivity and the impact of climate change and all the other factors that are going to influence the productivity is like taken care of, or people are prepared, the community is prepared. So digital transformation plays a very important role, and I'm glad that MRC is working a lot towards that end. We are also making sure that we are generating state-of-the-art knowledge with regards to technology and theory, and making sure that we are upskilling the youth in those regards. Because if India takes a step forward towards investing in infrastructure for MSP and blue economy, of course, because China is facing that issue right now. China has the infrastructure ready, but it doesn't have the manpower. So MRC actually has placed a lot of stress on making sure that the acoustic capacity and capability building of our youth is given a top priority. And also fourth, the MSP assessment tools for socioeconomic and environmental impact. This is also one of the domains that MRC is working towards under the Underwater Domain Awareness Framework. So the recommendations from the as a representative of MRC is that we should engage with the subject, the knowledge, the stakeholder, and the technological development. We should have outreach programs for collaboration, planning, and financing. And we should sustain all of that work with legal framework, assessments, and revisions. So I would like to conclude my presentation with this. Thank you so much for the opportunity.
Thanks a lot, Catherine. Next, we have with us Divya Rai, who's going to be, who is a fellow at MRC. So I'd like to call upon Divya to make the presentation and introduce herself and talk about presentation that she's going to do.
Hi, Nisha. Can you see my slides?
Yes, Divya.
Okay, thank you. Good evening, everyone. Before I begin my presentation, I would like to thank Commander Arnab Das for giving me this opportunity. My name is Divya Rai, and today on the occasion of World Maritime Day, I will be presenting on the topic safeguarding the Indian Ocean, navigating multilateral partnerships for underwater domain awareness. I have divided my presentation in 3 subcategories. First, that will highlight the importance of Indian Ocean region, and second, the what is UDA framework, which I'll touch upon briefly since Catherine has already covered in her presentation. And the third is I will take the case of small island developing states in understanding the need for safeguarding the Indian Ocean region and push for a multilateral collaboration. Now, to begin with the importance of Indian Ocean region, as Admiral and Catherine, they both have elaborated quite elegantly that Indian Ocean region has dramatically risen in the recent decade. And there are multiple factors, one of them being the geographical positioning and bordering countries, and also the major home for the choke points and sea lines of communication. Around 2.7 billion people live in the countries that lines the shores of Indian Ocean region. If you look at the trade nexus and the important choke points, Indian Ocean region serves as a vital nexus for global trade, hosting major choke points and sea lines of communication. And these routes are essential arteries for transportation of goods, connecting economies and regions across the world. And of around 9 world's important choke points, 3 are there in the Indian Ocean region. And these are the bottleneck that connects the important 2 waterways. And in case if there is a blockade or these routes are unavailable, the alternative routes are usually expensive, long, or in some cases impossible for the larger ship and oil tankers to navigate. Therefore, countries bordering the Indian Ocean region, including India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, Africa, they wield substantial influence over the region's geopolitics. Not just that, the Indian Ocean region is also rich in their natural resources. Around 40% of the world offshore oil production take place in the Indian Ocean basin. Energy flows around 36%, 36 million barrel per day, equivalent to around 40% of the world oil supply, and 60% of the world oil trade travel through the entryways into and out of the Indian Ocean. Fishing in the Indian Ocean accounts for almost 50% of the world's total, and it has increased some around 13-fold between 1915 and 2010 to 11.5 million tons. And Indian Ocean region is also rich in its deposits, mainly minerals like nickel, cobalt, iron, and massive sulfide deposits are there in the region. And these highlights the importance of Indian Ocean region. And mainly due to the interest of the major powers and the geoeconomic prominence, Indian Ocean region is also facing a lot of underwater threats. As we all know that the ocean are vital part of our global ecosystem, and the need for resilient ocean has become necessary, especially in the face of climate change. The underwater ecosystem of the Indian Ocean region are facing various threats, both from natural and anthropogenic, which has significant impact on the marine life and overall health of the ecosystem. If you look at this slide, I have outlined some of the problems, underwater threats to the Indian Ocean region, namely climate change, overfishing, urbanization, and industrial activities along the coastline, which contributes to the pollution, invasive species, illegal, unreported and unregulated fishing, oil and chemical spills, coral bleaching, concern about the potential environmental impact of deep sea mining. For example, the IUU fishing accounts for a substantial portion of the fishing in the Indian Ocean region, and overfishing has been one of the major cause of concern for the countries in the region. Overfishing has also led to the depletion of key species, including tuna, sharks, and various reef fish. And if you look at the coral bleaching, the coral region in the Indian Ocean region covers around 20,000 square kilometer. And the region coral reefs are facing threat from the coastal development, pollution, and rising sea temperature, which is leading to the coral bleaching events. So therefore, to sum it up, the Indian Ocean region has been facing a lot of issues. Therefore, the knowledge of underwater ecosystem becomes an essential for the stability of maritime domain. And addressing these threats in the Indian Ocean region requires international cooperation, sustainable fisheries management, improved pollution control measures, and development of marine protected areas. Therefore, with the world shifting its focus towards the maritime domain, particularly toward the Indian Ocean region, knowledge of the domain is always the first step towards the effective capacity and capability development. My apologies for that. The underwater domain awareness framework proposed by the MRC exactly seeks to address the requirement for the policy and technology intervention, along with the acoustic capability and capability enhancement. If we look at the figure carefully, the underwater domain awareness framework proposed by the MRC, it has horizontal and vertical structures that represent different needs. The horizontal construct represent the resource availability with respect to the technology, infrastructure, and skill specific to the stakeholders, while the vertical constructs display the hierarchy of establishing a comprehensive UDA. The first level, which deals with the sensing of undersea domain for the threats, resources, and activities, while the second analyzes, and the third, which makes to generate a plan for security strategy, conservation plans, and resource utilization. An effective UDA can definitely encourage a safe, secure, and sustainable growth model to manage the challenges and opportunities in the tropical littorals of the IOR, while it also it is also ensuing with our Prime Minister's vision of Sagar, which is security and growth for all in the region. Therefore, the unrealized aptness of UDA to monitor the marine ecosystem, including the fish pollution, coral reefs, can help in sustainable exploration and regulated use of marine resources. Now I'll take the case of SIDS. Safeguarding the and exploring the world's ocean is definitely a huge responsibility, with climate change now posing a significant risk to the underwater domain, especially in the IOR. The SIDS, the small island developing states, are at a major threat of it, are at the major receiving end of the climate change impacts. Often they are located remotely, very small size and the population. Small islands states span the globe, but are also susceptible to the environmental challenges. Hence, the UDA capability have indeed become critical in ensuring sustainable development. But the question comes, how can an underwater domain awareness and multilateral constructs contribute to the building resilience of small island developing states against the climate change risk in the Indian Ocean region, considering both the maritime security and the environmental sustainability? Now we'll go ahead with the small island developing states in the Indian Ocean region. Indian Ocean region is definitely surrounded by 26 littorals and 11 hinterlands nations, which makes approximately 30% of the global population. It also accounts for 30% of coral reefs, around 40,000 square kilometers of mangroves, and at least 9 marine ecosystems, some of the world's largest estuaries. IOR is also a significant contributor to the productivity of SIDS, surrounding it with the estimated yield of around 6 million tons of capture of fisheries and 23 million tons of culture fisheries, which is nearly equal to 10 to 90% of world production. So you can clearly see that the small island developing states in the Indian Ocean region are vital due to their economic significance and their economic resources. Environmental significance and economic resources, and their role in the regional and global geopolitics has become definitely immense. SIDs in IOR holds, I'll just briefly lay out why the SIDs in the IOR are important to all of us. The economic zone, for example, the EEZ around these islands offer access to the valuable mineral resources, including fisheries, potentially lucrative mineral deposits on the seabed. The regional diplomacy, SIDs often play a role in regional diplomatic initiative, fostering cooperation in issues like maritime security, environmental pollution, disaster management. While if you look at the maritime security aspect, the strategic location of SIDS is in key maritime choke points make them important for maritime security in the IOR. They are often served as a crucial way station for the naval and commercial vessels affecting the global trade and security. Therefore, protecting and supporting these states is not only ethical, but also an essential for ensuring the stability and sustainability of wider Indian Ocean region and beyond. Although I've mentioned that the EEZ of these small island developing states are not that, are one of the largest. If you look at the UNDP data, in 3.5% of SIDS land, while 3.5% of SIDS is land, while 96.5% is ocean. Their EEZ might be significantly larger than their land area, which serves them as the major prominent player in the Indian Ocean region. Now the question arises, how do we understand the underwater activities, and to what extent are the anthropogenic activities impacting the SIDS? And more critically, why inclusion of UDA in multilateral constructs becomes is extremely important, imperative for all of us. As we know that the 80% of the IOR region remains unexplored due to challenges such as high temperature, low pressure, low visibility, and more, understanding of science of underwater acoustic spread can help us determine the geophysical, hydrological, and ecological characteristics of marine biodiversity. Therefore, a comprehensive UDA framework in the multilateral could balance the sustainable economic activities and marine conservation in the SIDS. Similarly, the disaster, for example, I'll give you an example of disaster resilience. Supporting SIDS in disaster preparedness and responses is not just an act of solidarity, but it also means that means of reducing the humanitarian and economic toll of natural disaster that affect the region, neighboring regions. SIDS are often at the front line of the climate change, and they almost contribute to less than 1% of the global carbon emission, but they are at the forefront of receiving the threats from the climate change. So therefore, the dependence of small island countries on the marine resources and oceans is multifaceted, encompassing social, economic, cultural, and environmental aspects. If you look at the figure carefully, this illustrates the marine ecosystem which is there in the center and their services that is provided to the human communities. Marine ecosystem in the SIDS with respect to the Indian Ocean region, which ranges from tropical coral reef to the sea ice ecosystem in the Arctic, and they also include the ecosystem with freely drifting planktons with animals and seaweeds that live on the ocean bottoms. So we can say that the SIDS are definitely an important player in the Indian Ocean region, and it's not possible for them to conserve their environment alone, and which none of us can. Therefore, a small island will rely more on the multilateral constructs than ever before. Small island can benefit from the access of global forum to be heard, to address the unique social, economic, and environmental challenges, find solution together and definitely for the ocean conservation, technology approaches and innovations are key to it. Now, the way forward, SIDs are unique and are characterized by their fragile environment. Most of it, and just a sec, most of it, they are among the least contributor of the climate change, which I've already, but they suffer the most. Therefore, the UDA is the need for the R. Multilateral forums like IONS, IORA, they provide a platform for SIDS, including India, to engage in dialogue, share knowledge, coordinate efforts to mitigate the impact of climate change on their underwater ecosystem. An effective UDA is not only critical in addressing the maritime security threat, but it's also important in monitoring the challenges which are posed by the climate change. By enhancing UDA capabilities, SIDS and their partners can definitely understand the oceans and thereby improving their disaster preparedness, early warning system, and sustainable resource management. Therefore, there are definitely exists a knowledge gap in understanding the underwater ecosystem, particularly in terms of data about the sea-based resources, health of the ocean, issue of biodiversity, marine aquatic life, and the impact of pollution and the land-based industrial discharge on the marine habitat. Therefore, they can only be addressed by adopting a comprehensive UDA framework. UDA and the push for blue economy in organizations like IORA and BIMSTEC can enhance their collective maritime security, promote sustainable resources management, and effectively respond to the natural disaster and other shared challenges of the SIDS. To sum it up, I just want to put it across that the realization of true potential of ocean should be accompanied by awareness to drive the economic development from marine resources while ensuring that the conservation and sustainable management of marine ecosystem is in place. I'll end this presentation on how can the outcome and best practices emerging from the multilateral forums from such as IONS and IORA be applied to strengthen the resilience of SIDS underwater ecosystem in the IOR, especially in the context of climate change. I think it's one of the questions that we all need to ponder about, and with that, I'll end my presentation. I'll just leave this slide for a second just to give a view of our globe, which is an ocean view. I have tilted the globe upside down just to make people understand the sea blindedness does not exist in 21st century. Thank you so much. If you have any question, please feel free to reach out to me. Thank you.
Thank you, Divya. I think we'll be able to take all the questions after the presentations are over. And now we'll go on to the next one. Next, we have Deepak with us, Deepak Kumar, who is an intern at MRC. And he's going to be talking about the role of UDA in mitigating effects of climate change on oceans. So, Deepak, you can share your screen and you can start your presentation.
Um, yeah, so good evening to all. My name is Deepak Kumar, and I have pursued sustainable development from TERI. At MRC, I'm working as an intern, and my primary focus of work has been impact of climate change on oceans. So here's a preview of my content slide, which follows introduction, indicators of climate change induced modulations in cyclones, and policy pathway, need for UDA. So briefly going through the importance, introduction of oceans and impact of climate change through an exploratory lenses of oceanic influence and challenges. As we all know, large quantities of heat, fresh water, and carbon are stored and transported by the ocean, impacting carbon. So if we are to take into account Church and Levitas, they states that 93% of Earth's
But
stored
your
heat from the
slides are
last
not
50
getting
years
shared, no?
have been stored. Sorry, sir?
Deepak, yeah, you can put your slides on like full screen, and also your slides are not moving. There's no transition in the slides.
Okay, just I'll try again.
Deepak, share your entire screen so that we can see the presentation mode.
Okay, sure.
Yeah.
I'll do that.
Yes.
Sure. Screen. Is it visible now?
Yes.
And the
Yes, that's also visible. You can go ahead.
okay, yeah, thank you, and sorry for this. As I was stating, oceans absorbs a significant portion of excess heat generated by human activities, making it the primary reservoir for Earth's stored heat over the last 50 years. With its vast mass and heat capacity, the ocean circulation and interaction with atmosphere have a profound impact on climate variability and change. Although we have been stating for a long time now that we have limited as in target to 1.5 to 2 degrees Celsius, but the research and the results of data for the Indian Ocean would prove that it's insufficient to say the least, and more about the results later. But the factors which have been as in response to climate change are ocean acidification, ocean oxygen depletion, pollution, and other stressors are creating complex and unpredictable interactions, potentially leading to a drastic shift in ocean composition and functions. Oceans as in system is very intricate. So the literature review would provide that if it's the impact in one region would also lead to a significant impact in the other part of globe as well. So talking about the ocean changing ocean temperature, its impact, trends, and observation. So, although if we have to state that average surface temperature of over half of world's ocean have been abnormally high since 2014, and by 2019, 57% of ocean stormwater was extremely hot compared to the 2% recorded during the second industrial revolution. My bad, sorry. So, if we are talking about the challenges in temperature analysis, the major factor is data incoherency because of the changes in instruments as well and the depth. With depth, the temperature variations occur at a huge scale. That's why they have been not so coherent with respect to data. And an important factor which can be attributed to sea surface temperature and also the absorption of heat has led to local extreme heat index used to quantify deviations from 1870 to 1990. And global mean LEHI increased by 68.23% from 1989 to 2010-19, means in a span of 20 years, it has shown a significant increase of 63%. So if we have to speak about the long-term trends, warming trend in the upper ocean in the 0 to 700 meter has been observed. When we talk about beyond 2000 meter, this is where the problem happens because we have limited data for depths below 2000 meter. So moving on to the next critical issue of oceanic oxygen depletion. So oxygen acquisition by ocean occurs through gas exchange with the atmosphere and phytoplanktons near the surface. Dissolved oxygen from deep ocean layers is transported and mixed into neighboring water masses. Ocean deoxygenation can result from shifts in surface solubility, ventilation decline, or deep ocean respiration increases. Now, oceanic deoxygenation has been happening at an alarming rate, approximately 2% per year over half a century. And variation based on depth and approach, of course, has been incorporated into this result. From one estimate, it could be said that cumulative loss of 4.8 to more or less 2.8 petamoles since 1916. And the concept of sea surface temperature, the same applies here as well, that there's huge regional variation. It varies by depth and also the latitudes. And talking about temperature-driven solubility decline, this is the major factor of decrease in sea surface temperature. Because with rise in temperature, the solubility of oxygen degrades, and this leads to the deoxygenation of oceans. Solubility changes account for 50% of oxygen loss in the top 1,000 meter, as was stated by Smith in 2017. But it's not all. It can't be stated the only reason for the changes in ocean oxygen concentration, because atmosphere ocean indices like NO, NaO, ENSO, EDO impact dissolved oxygen levels as well. And the same thing, coastal upwelling regions are rich in biological and nutrient stimulating factors. Talking about the ocean acidification, its impact causes and future projections. So slow acidification of CO is known as ocean acidification. I would not go into the chemistry of it, but because of increased absorption of CO2, the thermal equilibrium of CO2 and salt water has been altered. This has led to ocean acidification, a phenomenon which has been stated by many people throughout decades, I would state. And there are multilateral organizations as well, which we'll speak of later. So the alarming thing is the unprecedented rate of change. The rate of change in ocean acidification likely unparalleled in the last 66 million years, as was stated by Honish and Zebe by their paper in 2016 and 2020, respectively. Future projection based on our CP and SSP scenarios anticipate a further drop in ocean pH by 0.1 to 0.4 units by 2100. Currently, ocean is considered to be a bit basic, varies from 7.4 to 7.8 pH, but the more it moves, if this trajectory is to be considered, the ocean will be not considered basic anymore. Rather, it will be not even slowly, it will be starkly going towards the acidic side of it. Now, the climate change has also led to change in sea level, and this has to do with the uncertainties in deep ocean warming contribution as well. Although limited historical data, especially in the Southern Ocean, hinders of our understanding of how warmer waters below 700 meter contribute to sea level rise. As you can see that in all the four different indicators, the discrepancy in data has been one of the hindering factors with respect to the research that has been going on throughout the decades from different scholars' perspective. Sea level change in response to ocean heating and cooling, water exchanges with continents and ice sheets, and oceanic circulation. Multi-decade variation in regional sea level are observed in Atlantic, Indian, Pacific Ocean, including Southern Ocean. While the sea level, now estimate based on the period from 1971 to 2010 suggests a trend of 0.1 to 0.2 millimeter per year between 700 to 2000 meters. Now, significant warming trend has been detected between 1,000 and 4,000 meters within south of sub-Antarctic front. Even the sub-Antarctic front has been a witness to this. Now, talking about this, these are the indicators. So what has been the impact? So moving on to the impact, and which is the main highlight of my study, are the tropical cyclones in the Indian Ocean region. Tropical cyclones are among nature's more destructive perils, with around 7% of tropical cyclones worldwide occurring in the Northern Ocean region itself, and more pronounced effect in Bengal, so much so that it is called the primary hotspot for tropical cyclones in the region, holding a significantly higher number compared to the Arabian Sea. Now, there are two distinct cyclonic seasons in the Indian Ocean, which are pre-monsoon and post-monsoon, respectively from March to May and October to December, respectively. Though some cyclonic disturbances occur during the transitional monsoon season from June to September, but mid-vertical wind shear during summer monsoon restricts cyclone a strong intensification in Bay of Bengal. But reality, Bay of Bengal and Arabian Sea collectively generate an average of 5 to 6 tropical cyclones annually, with 2 to 3 intensifying into severe cyclones. Now, if different scholars have taken into account different definition of what to be called as severe cyclone and what could be just called as a normal cyclones. But my research has focused on the definition of anything beyond 47 knot has to be categorized as severe cyclones, and anything lesser than that is categorized as cyclone. So, and most intense cyclones in the Bay of Bengal occur during the post-monsoon period, particularly in October and November, making it the storm season in South Asia. So the global trends of tropical cyclones, studies have shown an increase in the frequency and intensity of tropical cyclones, often correlated with tropical sea surface temperature. So this is another concept which will better what is potential intensity, why is it important while talking about sea surface temperature. So potential intensity represents the theoretical maximum strength of tropical cyclones based on sea surface temperature and air column thermodynamics. Higher sea surface temperature leads to greater stabilization and amplified precipitation intensity, as was stated by Bester and Emmanuel. But remote changes in sea surface temperature can affect potential intensity by altering upper atmospheric temperatures. Upper tropospheric temperature deviations in the tropical free tropospheres are influenced by average sea surface temperature variation across tropical regions. It was stated by Shen et al. In the year 2000. So all in all, PI is influenced by both local and distant sea surface temperature. As I had stated, some time back, that changes at one region of the sea is also going to impact different regions, which will be highlighted. So if we have to take into account the temporal evolution, sea surface temperature in tropical region consistently show an upward trend over time. PI, on the other hand, displays significant decadal fluctuations. So with potential for both increase and decrease. This is the catch here. Although sea surface showing an upward trajectory, but PI has been increasing and decreasing, as was stated by Vecchi and Soden as well. So there are regional disparities as what trends in sea surface temperature has been prominent in tropical region. Now, talking about the findings, so the study area of my work has been Bay of Bengal and Arabian Sea. So this is, as you can see, it's for Arabian. Decadal sea surface temperature has been on the rise, so much so that it shows positive coefficient indicating consistent warming. But when we see the findings for Bay of Bengal, the same decadal temperature, and it shows a negative coefficient showing a different pattern altogether. Although the literature has highlighted that Bay of Bengal has been pronounced for its tropical cyclones, but the transition is happening, as will be visible in the findings. The findings show the contrasting trend, as in the exhibit steady and statistically significant warming over time. Bay of Bengal displays a divergent pattern without a coherent warming trend during the same period, highlighting the intricate characteristics of regional climate dynamics. And the hypothesis of PI, as was stated, was rising sea surface temperature will be associated with higher cyclone frequency. But the findings are not in the same light. The findings say, the contrary to the hypothesis, no direct correlation between sea surface temperature and cyclone frequency has been established in the Arabian Sea. Notable decrease in the overall frequency of cyclone occurrences along the Indian subcontinent coastline. But paradoxically, an increase in cyclone intensity and severity despite fewer cyclones has been observed. And as you can see from this table, that from the period from 1891 to 1954, both East and West coasts received a lesser share of severe cyclones. But for the period of 1955 to 2017, the percentage change was 2.03% and 2.28 for the western coast. So this shows that although the cyclone frequency has not been on the rise, but the intensity has been increasing at an alarming rate. Now, so as we know, that Government of India has been working to establish its Kaladan model projects, and another ambitious project which was discussed in this G20 summit was India, Middle East, Europe Economic Corridor. Both this Kaladan is based on Bay of Bengal, and India, Middle East, Europe Economic Corridor will be starting the foothill. The foothill would be the Arabian Sea, but from the data we can see that these regions are going to be prone more to more to cyclonic activities, and that to severe cyclonic activities. This will not just hinder the development and the people living in the communities, but also the security and the economics that India is projecting itself with the blue economy as well. So what is the pathway? What can we do about this now? What has been done so far? So the pathway of policy, if we have to take a historical approach towards this, in the last half a decade, heightened policy awareness of the ocean issue with climate policy has been witnessed. Shift from isolated mentions to convergence between climate and ocean governance. The initial push was given in the 1922 UNFCCC, and subsequent treaties form the foundation of international climate law. Parties work to reduce GHG emission and adapt to climate change. But historically, the ocean received little attention at COP events. UNFCCC traditionally focused on terrestrial ecosystem economy and anthropogenic changes. The landmark could be stated as the Paris Agreement. It elevated the importance of all ecosystems, including ocean. Recital 13 emphasizes marine biodiversity and ecosystem integrity, further leading to nationally determined contributions. Yes. So NDC under the Paris Agreement reflect increasing emphasis on challenges and priorities. An estimate shows that 70% of submitted NDCs include ocean and marine issues, more on adaptation although. But it has led to the mainstreaming of oceans. Growing interest in mainstreaming the ocean into climate negotiations post Conference of Parties 21. It can be stated that after 2015, IPCC Special Report on Ocean and Cryosphere was launched in the year 2019. And again, it led to Ocean Action Day. Regular Ocean Action Day is moved to the official blue zone at COP events nowadays. Increased visibility and access to influential Conference of Party stakeholders. So one has into account the Fiji Ocean Pathway at COP23 aims to increase ocean consideration within UNFCCC, proposes Talanoa dialogue for NDC preparation and pre-2020 implementation. Although this could be said is lacking behind a lot, but it is the direction forward which I think every major organization has taken up. Residency labels COP25 as Blue COP to emphasize ocean climate nexus. Sorry. And it further led to the virtual ocean dialogue. The first one was held in 2020, and subsequently two more were held in 2021 and 2022. This made a further trajectory from barely speaking about the oceans to completely and separately speaking about the oceans. And if we have to take into account the act to combat impact of climate change on the oceans, there are plenty of the bodies, but although little to no results have been found, but I think as we will see later that although these bodies have led to the development of few milestones in the last half a decade. So one of the bodies is United Nations Division for Ocean Affairs and Law of the Seas, and Intergovernmental Oceanographic Commission, Global Ocean Observing System, and Global Ocean Acidification Observing Network, and Global Coral Reef Monitoring Network, World Organization. These bodies and then Ocean Acidification Observing Network, and these has been talked about. The one which I couldn't touch upon was the Ocean and Climate Initiative Alliance. It is a new alliance which takes into account stakeholders, including governments, non-governmental organizations, scientists, and businesses, to work collectively towards understanding, mitigating, and adapting to the impact of climate change on ocean ecosystem and the broader environment. So taking into an account how the different conference of parties has led to the establishment of the debate and the discussion that we have on oceans nowadays. So the first pivotal push was provided in the Kyoto Protocol of 1997, although it focused on the terrestrial part of the climate change more, but it also took into account the role of oceans in carbon sequestration and emphasized the importance of addressing climate change impact on vulnerable regions, including coastal areas and small developing states, which was expressed in lengths by Divya. So moving away from that. And then the second push was given by COP6 and COP7, Hague and Marrakesh Conference of Parties. Both tried to gain traction, but on the adaptation part. While the ocean was again not a primary focus, the vulnerabilities of coastal communities to sea weather events was acknowledged. And then coming on to the Bali Conference of Parties and Conference of Parties sought increased attention to climate change impacts on ocean. So much so the Bali Action Plan included adaptation as one of its pillars, recognizing the significance of coastal zones and marine ecosystem in adaptation strategies. Whereas the COP14 discussion centered on enhancing the role of forests and ecosystem, including marine and coastal ecosystem in climate change and mitigation efforts. Whereas Copenhagen and Cancun Conference of Parties led to the recognition of challenges faced by coastal communities and importance of conserving marine ecosystems. Funding mechanisms like the adaptation funds were established. So this is the first time funding adaptation funding mechanisms were established to support climate resilience, not just adaptation but resilience as well. And of course, Conference of Parties. The next one was Marrakesh and Bonn. So the Talona dialogue initiated at COP13, the Bonn, included discussion on ocean impacts and bringing the ocean further into this further led to Katowice climate package established implementing the Paris Agreement. The rulebook provides opportunities for countries to include ocean-related activities and projects in the and reporting. And as was stated earlier, almost 70 to 80% of the NDCs are moving in the direction of oceans. And the Madrid session led to the Chilean president panel on ocean economy, which aims to integrate ocean protection and climate. So biodiversity, ocean, and climate. So just a second. So as was stated, that Chilean presidency COP emphasized ocean-related measures. It led to the partnership with Because the Ocean Initiative, supported by around provide UNFCCC parties with recommendation on ocean-centered NDCs. And again, another important landmark was post-2020 international frameworks. IUCN World Conservation Congress 2020 and COP15 of CBD 2020 opportunities to strengthen ocean climate links. Negotiation on high sea aims for a legally binding international agreement on marine biodiversity. And the focus on adaptation measures to reduce GHG emissions from shipping by 50% by 2050 compared to the 2008 levels, aligning with the objective of Paris Agreement. UN Decade of Ocean Science for Sustainable Development falls in the same decade that we are speaking of it, from 2021 to 2030, and it aims to foster synergies, partnership, and public awareness, promote efficient ocean science policy interface for sustainable development. Now, need for ocean-based energy. I know that we have been speaking a lot about the transition, the energy transition, which is being talked about at every nowadays. But we can also take into account the energy which can be harnessed from the oceans. So first, it would need to undertake marine spatial planning. Again, it has been discussed already, so I would refrain from going further into it. But it would require developing national targets to increase the share of renewable energy mix in the national mix, which is currently happening, and we have good targets around for it. But the energy harnessed from the ocean should also be into that mix of things. And again, a strategic national roadmap for zero carbon economy by 2050. And of course, it would the policy part would require research as its front end. It will be a twin. It will be actually a trident type of approach, which will be policy, research, and technology, and same for need for policy of coastal and marine ecosystem. So as we have stated that already, it's a part of things. It isn't part of things, but we need more concrete and concrete and resolute towards working for it. Enhance protection measures for mangrove, seagrasses, and salt marshes, and undertake national level mapping of blue carbon. In initiatives such as these would lead up to the roadmap that we have discussed. And now the UDA paved the way. Again, one of the things which was discussed by Divya, but as we have seen that there's a lot of data discrepancy while talking about the indicators itself, because beyond firstly there's changes in apparatus from every now and then, and changes in methodology will lead to the changes in data accumulation and analysis itself. So for that we need a lot of research which will go into picture, and with UDA, as it takes into account pollution, corporate, national security, science and research. So it will lead to the security and the push for blue economy with disaster management and science and technology. I think when we talk of MSP, another, I think sometime later in the presentation will be discussed another technological things that I'm so sorry, just a second. Yeah. So technological component will be discussed perhaps later. So hello, I'm sorry, is my screen still visible?
Yes, your screen is visible.
I'm so sorry. I think my it has stuck now. It's my battery is going to die. So yeah, it's more or less what. But I would like to end with a quote which states that yes. I'm so sorry. It's working again. Is it visible?
Not yet.
Hello.
Not yet. Deepak.
Deepak, you can
Just-
conclude now. I think
Okay.
you've taken enough time. You can please conclude.
Okay, sir. Sorry for that, sir. So I would just like to say that the climate emergency is a race we are losing, but it is a race that we can still win if we take on to the actions and proper research that has been taken up by MRC. Thank you, and so sorry for taking more time than required.
Thank you so much, Deepak. That was quite a very good presentation. Next, we have with us Romit Kavre, who is going to be speaking on the topic sediment management in the Indian Ocean region. So I'd like to call upon Romit to take the stage and present.
Uh, I'm Romit, and I'll be presenting my work on the sediment management in the Indian Ocean region. So, yeah. So the agenda for the today's discussion will include the sediment management, and then I'll like to talk about what are the various the brief components of the sediment management, and then how a framework is to be proposed for the sediment management studies, which for the Indian Ocean region, which will encompass the various technological and the policy interventions required at the national as well as at the regional scale. So, starting with what is a sediment? So, basically, sediment covers all of these riverbed or the seabed substrates from the fine silts and sands to large boulders. The sediment management covers a wide range of activities that range from the dredging, the sediment transport studies, and understanding the sediment texture and what all applications are arising from the seabed structure. Now, this sediment management requires like this sediment management in reservoirs and dams is very crucial for the working and the development of the various ports, harbors, the inland waterways, and other dynamics of the other sediment dynamics over time. Now, that's why there is a need for the formulation of long-term policies required to encourage proper capacity building, coupled with the policy interventions for a sustainable, holistic development of the region. Now, coming to the sediment management, there are two broad components. One being the sediment transport studies, and then after the sediment transportation has been done, how the structure of the sediment, the topography or the structure of the seabed affects the various economic activities for the various nations. Now, the first part is the sediment transport studies. Now, again, the sediment transport studies is a pressing issue when it comes to the management of the various river basins, waterways, uh, or the confluence of the rivers and and of the water bodies like the estuaries and deltas. So now, this sediment transportation has a lot of effect on the dynamics of the coastal zones, rivers, and estuaries, especially on the inland navigation, the aquaculture, inland fisheries, and all. And there is a need of a targeted approach with the sediment transport studies, especially in the Indian Ocean region, because the various frameworks that are in place across the various other parts of the globe cannot be directly translated here due to the unique characteristics of the Indian Ocean region, the various socio-economic issues, the climatic conditions, stakeholder perspectives, and all, which we'll be looking into more detail further in the presentation. The sediment transport studies are a lifeline of the various benthic communities directly or indirectly. In fact, these various details of the sediment grain size distribution, and the various ecological process affect the sediment transport and how they are distributed over the various water bodies. This brings us to the so now this graphic can help you understand how basically the sediment transport occurs right from the source, uh, basically in the inland whatever the river and systems, from the source to the various sink, that is the deltas and the estuaries. So coming to the next part, that is the sediment classification. So once over millions of years, the sediment transportation mechanisms have occurred. They describe the different sediment texture at the seabed or the riverbed. Now these are very much required for the archaeological and the geological perspective. The military applications, recreation, as well as economic applications are based on the sediment structure. In fact, the various texture defines the various biotic and the abiotic aspects of the marine ecosystem, and we need to have proper policy interventions in place in order to have a socio-economic development pertaining to the deep sea research and harnessing the various resources that the seabed has to offer. So when we talk about the sediment classification application or the seabed applications, we may talk about the sediment bearing pressure, the benthic ecosystem, the abiotic element detection, offshore oil and gas exploration is there, the submarine and the cable route plannings are all there. So the seabed provides vast array of applications for us. Here, my work mostly focuses on the first three. We'll talk in detail more about them. So the first one being the sediment bearing pressure. So it is basically the amount of force that the sediments can carry without excessive settlement or deformation. Now, this sediment bearing pressure is affected that is the density, weight, its roundness, and its grain size distribution. In fact, it is very much important to this foundation studies, the retaining walls and slope stabilization when we come to the offshore landscape, especially while constructing the offshore oil rigs are there, ceilings, dams. In fact, the sediment bearing pressure can also be helpful in military applications. For example, the armed forces might require a comprehensive sediment bearing pressure charts for their say amphibious vehicles deployment or the temporary bridges deployment within shallow waters. Thus, it has various economic and geostrategic importance as well. Coming to the next application, this is the benthic ecosystem, which basically implies the ecological region at the lowermost level of the water body. Now, this is very much important for nutrient recycling and as well as serve as an indicator for the serve as an indicator for the health of the ecosystem. We need to have proper monitoring we need to have proper monitoring structures in place in order to understand the variability of these benthic assemblages, uh, various assemblages due to the various climatic fluctuations, the ocean warming, the sea rise level, pollution and all. And thus prediction and monitoring of these benthic assemblages is very much important for the conservation efforts of our efforts of the marine life. Now the next one is the abiotic element detection, which basically underlines the identification of the identification of the objects that are not part of the natural seabed, which would include the marine litter, the polymetallic nodules or debris or underwater archaeology as well. Now, we have seen that in recent times, trillions of pieces of microplastics are lying on the seabed, floating across an oceans and are affecting the marine life. They have entered a food web directly and indirectly, also having effect on the human life as well. Coming to the polymetallic nodule, these are potato-sized concentrations of economic metals like cobalt, manganese, and nickel, thus having a lot of economic importance for India. So when we have seen that the seabed or the sediments have a lot of economic importance as well, there is a need for developing this an end-to-end sediment framework encompassing all of the applications, the policy and technology framework. So this framework is mostly based on the fact that acoustics provide the most comprehensive way forward. So and it's based on the UDA framework. So this is the UDA framework as represented as a cube. Similarly, a sediment management framework can be envisaged uh, just like the faces of the cube representing different aspects of the framework. The one being the policy and the technological interventions that are required. Now, this is based on the acoustics and its capacity and capability development within the region as well as the national capacity building. Then comes the source path receiver model, which in which we will talk about the unique characteristics of the Indian Ocean region that hamper the direct use of the global systems directly into the vicinity of the Indian Ocean, as well as the 2C to understand the 2 share module, which helps in the visualization, outreach, and uh, uh, decision making when it comes to the sediment management applications. So yeah. So firstly, we need to understand what is the current scenario. Anything for any policy making or any technological development would require current baseline studies that are there. That is based on the data that can be accumulated on the current situation. Now, conventionally, the data is sampled using various borers and samplers, and then the sediments are being sent into various laboratories for their testing for geotechnical properties on anything. These are time consuming uh, and as well as very much capital extensive as well. That's why there are a lot of acoustic systems being developed which use the sonars, satellites, and other systems. Acoustic Doppler systems have also been developed for sediment transport studies. In fact, in recent times, these computer-aided modeling techniques have also been used, which include the idea of digital twin, the digital elevation modeling, in order to have a large-scale idea of how the sediment transportation studies occur. Thus, what are the various challenges when we come to the policy and the technology part? The first thing is that when we come to the Indian Ocean region, there are not a lot of agreements in place for regional cooperation when we compare it to the Atlantic and other ocean. In fact, there is the IORA, which is the most comprehensive enough. Now, another thing is that there is not a lot of not a lot of investments in terms of capacity building. In fact, that for developing countries like India, securing necessary funding for developing extensive capabilities might be a significant challenge. So, on one hand, the seabed might have enormous economic activities, enormous potential, but the various aspects required for harnessing them, like the UDA, underwater communication, underwater acoustics, the AI, robotics, they have been neglected in the curriculum as well as and are neglected by the topmost universities of the nation as well. Now, even after the disappearance of the MH370 airlines, we have seen that the global share of the bathymetric data is very less, accounting just the bathymetric data that has been conducted for the MH370 rescue team. It was just mere 1% of the Indian Ocean region. So, the region needs to step up for the understanding the baseline studies. In fact, when coming to the maritime research, India has a lot of monitoring organizations dedicated to these marine ecosystems. We have the National Institute of Oceanology, National Center for Coastal Research, we have the INCOIS as well as ISRO in there. In fact, there are currently 16 different ministries, departments, and organizations that are in place, which often lead to a lack of coordination, resulting in lack of guidance, sometimes confusion and a lack of standardized procedures again hamper the various data sharing and policy making techniques. So we see that with the lack of adequate funding, many nations often depend on the developed nations for their assistance as well as their systems for collecting data. But again, that may bring in the problems of intellectual property rights, and this strategic data might be collected by other adversaries as well. So we must understand the current challenges are not only related to nations but the security of the region as well. Now, when we talk about Indian Ocean region, it is very unique in terms of its location as well. So, and it's of various interest to not only of the Indian Ocean region countries, but of almost every other regional powerful country in the world. In fact, the large biodiversity of the region renders and the climatic fluctuations renders the sonar and the other renders the sonar and other innovations very reduces its efficiency. In fact, it renders the Indian Ocean region acoustically shallow, leading to the suboptimal performance of the various sonar systems, decreasing its efficiency to around 60 to 70%. The various biodiversity of the littoral waters again lead to complex interference amongst the sonar waves, which again leads to more attenuation and difficulties in properly having the sonar signals. So, in fact, there what needs to be done? What are the various interventions that need to be done? The first thing is that the various multilateral systems like the IORA, the Sagar Vision should work with various people building national as well as regional capabilities. The member states as well as the conversation partners to take deliberate steps in having this conceptualization of the UDM, MSP, blue economy, and as well as collaboration between the various institutions to address the specific capacity gaps in the region and develop innovative solutions catered for the region. Now, multidisciplinary and multifunctional entities can interact with each other to synergize their effect for the larger common goal. This can be done by coming together of the various academic institutions, the private sector, and the various governments. In fact, one such thing can be the blue funding thing, in which can lead to various governments to invest more on their capacity building parts. Again, with the large inflow of data and the volume of data, there is a need to establish the data centers across the region. This could be done by developing proper policies. The region as well as the nation should have a proper maritime law, which should have legal arrangements for the integrated maritime policies, highlighting the various standardized approaches towards early warning systems, data collection and data aggregation, as well as the various memorandums of understanding. So the government of India can as well work with the Norway, which has quite a lot of technical expertise in this maritime field to develop systems for the region. In this regard, the 2C, to understand and to share model helps us a lot in the capacity building part. The 2C part encompasses the various hardware related structures. So what can be the specification of the sensors, what are the vehicles that need to be used for the deployment, like the AUVs, remotely operated vehicles, or the submarines that need to be used. Then once the data is collected, what are the various processing techniques that can be used for extracting the valuable information? The use of AI, uh, machine learning, supervised or unsupervised machine learning, noise filtering techniques can be used. And then once the data is collected, how that can be represented or distributed to various users. Again, some might require real-time data, while some of the clients might require data on a web-based GUI or some mobile-based application, which again range from a lot of time scale, resulting from weeks, months, or for decades. That needs to be understood properly, and the integration of MSP also helps a lot in this case. Again, we can see the case studies of across case studies which highlight some interventions that have been developed in particular regions and can be used for developing a proper comprehensive monitoring effort within the region. The first one is the EU has this EU UNIS habitat classification maps, which are basically standardized approaches for the reporting and assessing the health of the benthic ecosystems. Again, the Mekong River Delta is another case study that can be looked upon by India because it represents the tropical waters of the Indian Ocean region as well. So they have developed these standardized approaches for collection of daily sediment transport load, the sea level rise, and the uh, other approaches as well. This can be used in the JNPT port of India as well, which faces a lot of sedimentation, thus hampering the growth of the marine trade as well. The data which is to be collected should also follow the FAIR rules, which is the findable, accessible, interoperable, and the reusable principle, which would help proper data sharing mechanisms to be in place for proper decision making mechanisms. Uh, Again, like in the EU, there is the Marine Strategic Framework Directive. They have developed some proper descriptors for assessing the good environmental standards of their seas and their ecological assets. India and the region can learn a lot from them. Now, with this quote, I'll end my discussion. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Romit, for your presentation. Now we're left with two more presentations, and I'd like to call upon Fahish, who is a fellow at MRC, and she's going to be speaking on the topic importance of local community in biosphere reserves. So Khwahish, you can take over. In the meanwhile, I would request everyone else to keep their microphones on off so that it doesn't distract the presenter. Khwahish, you can take over. Thank you.
Hello.
Hi, Khwahish. You're audible and
Hi.
your screen is also visible.
All right. Great. All right. So good evening, everyone. My name is Kwaishvik, and I'm a research fellow with MRC. I'm a liberal arts honors final year student doing an undergraduate degree with a major in international relations and a double minor in economics and anthropology. And today I'll be talking about the importance of local communities in biosphere reserves. I'm going to be highlighting this one vertical that is essentially a bigger part of my research that I'm pursuing with MRC. This is sort of the flow of how my presentation will go. So I'll just stop over here for like 5-10 seconds so everyone can get a good idea. All right. I think firstly, it is important to discuss what a biosphere reserve entails. So essentially, a biosphere reserve is a site that aims to integrate sustainable use with promoting biodiversity. Now, the sites can include interdisciplinary approaches to map interactions between social and ecological systems. UNESCO, the international body that categorizes and manages the World Bank of Biodiversity Reserves, deems them to be local solutions to global problems. So, therefore, my project is essentially aiming to highlight the importance of these biosphere reserves as promoters of sustainable growth nationally and globally. So, the methodology that I've adopted for this inquiry is highly qualitative and hence it employs secondary data, sources such as policy briefs, academic papers, and more. I also conducted literature reviews, which have been used to formulate the findings for this project, along with the brief use of content analysis. Now, this is a project that adopts the case study model. So, here I'm going to be emphasizing or sort of just taking or basing my findings off of Sindhudurg, which is an area of socio-ecological pertinence, which I'll discuss later. So, therefore, a Sindhudurg specific case analysis also naturally becomes part of the methodology. Now, let's talk about Sindhudurg, right? Where does it factor in? Sindhudurg is an administrative district of the Konkan division of India. It is surrounded by the Arabian Sea on the east, the Belgaum district and Goa on the south, and the Ratnagiri district on the north. If witnessed closely, one can see how the area is unique for its coastal trade and how it connects to the hinterland. With the Portuguese trade flourishing on the Konkan coast, Sindhudurg's strategic importance was cemented as Shivaji Maharaj built a fort in the area, Sindhudurg, for monitoring and protection purposes. The present day area takes its name from this fort. Now, it's an important case point in my broader study because it's host to biodiversity that spans many areas. As a coastal district, marine biodiversity is present in the form of various fish, mollusks, crustaceans, etc. The Sindhudurg coral reefs are especially important as they support an underwater ecosystem. Sindhudurg mangroves act as breeding grounds for fish and protect the region from coastal erosion and storms. Mangroves also help sequester carbon dioxide, which contributes to climate action. There's also avian diversity here with migratory and resident birds. Now, despite Sindhudurg's offerings, it faces threats from emerging issues that have been mentioned before in this webinar, such as temperature shifts leading to changing migratory patterns of animals, climate change, population pressure in the area, and such more. Now, a general finding that I have come across is that Sindhudurg's biodiversity has been poorly conserved. In 1986, a marine sanctuary was to be opened in Sindhudurg, which never came to fruition. An empirical example of this poor effort is that Sindhudurg is essentially home to olive ridley turtles, which have now become endangered marine species during their nesting season. This paper would suggest that the answer to poor preservation could lie in implementing a biosphere reserve at Sindhudurg, and therefore talk of biosphere reserves and the policy that entails them on a broader scale. It suggests that the answer to poor preservation could lie in inclusive policy. Now, as visible since 2016, our biosphere reserves in India have not increased in number, and this can be a cause of concern given that environmental developments have occurred over the last few years, especially with COVID 19. So, when I'm further going to explore the importance of biosphere reserves, the literature review I conducted helped in the identification of three broad verticals that host the impact of importance: socio-political, socio-cultural, and socio-economic. Now, due to the paucity of time, I will briefly mention two cases under each vertical, meaning that I will talk about two sources under each vertical. Biosphere reserves are important for involving the local communities that settle near these areas in conservation efforts and for a better locally managed political system for land and water management. This will basically create an efficient top down system of polity where local stakeholders administer for governmental functioning. Now, Brunkhorst presents a paper outlining the Riverland Biosphere Reserve in Australia after several land care groups were established to spread the share of land management responsibility and decision making. This is a unique organizational arrangement for land care groups. UNESCO's involvement in the Biosphere Reserve space also carries its political dimension. Monitoring these reserves has enhanced the promotion of intergovernmental efforts to maintain biosphere reserves, thus affecting nations' diplomatic relations. Schlepp and Stoll-Kleeman conclude in their study that intergovernmental endeavors by UNESCO, like the Marine Biodiversity Program, have the potential to serve as positive stimuli for national policies on the integration of biodiversity conservation due to influence from international standards of the same. In socioeconomic importance, Kratzer and Amling mention the importance of biosphere reserves and the specific environment they create to offset social innovation for sustainable solutions, which then leads to interventions for the local economy and capital formation in these environmental areas by not just production of goods, but also employment of people and division of labor. Now, in a similar case, Petrusser and Petre and Mita mention how biosphere reserves should be able to inculcate the management of resources in people, and that while the protection and subsequent separation to a level of these reserves can be argued to be detrimental to development, it is beneficial if environmental education is increased amongst people. This will not only drive up literacy rates and awareness, but it will also lead to job creation and labor streamlining. Now, people, animals, and flora coexist in biosphere reserves. Hence, the importance of biosphere reserves to maintain culture emerges. Singh, Bodhakur, and Fukan mention how the Nokrek Biosphere Reserve in India helps sustain and protect the Garo tribe's cultural knowledge, which further helped their cultural continuity. Due to the reserve, local medicinal plants were conserved, leading to their culture's traditional knowledge of medicine to continue to be applied. Almost one-fourth of the plant species were used to treat cough, flu, and cold, prevalent ailments in that area. Similarly, Huepar Lozaya and co-authors point out that the Manu Biosphere Reserve maintained has been maintained due to the knowledge of indigenous people to cultivate land sustainably, and that these methods are better for amphibious conservation. So the social-cultural aspect here is of importance, and it points to something larger in the biosphere reserve nexus. That is the importance of local communities, traditional knowledge, and wisdom in the role of sustainability. Now, in my research, I refer to a secondary study that discusses the question, what management objectives should a biosphere reserve have? And this was done over a wide base of scholars of this area. Now, the findings that I got were that they pointed to a common consensus for the following 4 points: conservation as a key aim, research of the biosphere reserve, monitoring of the reserve, and education of people in and about biosphere reserves. Now, we understand that biosphere reserves are spaces where people reside. Therefore, an exchange between biosphere reserves and local people or communities is a given. For Sindhudurg too, for example, because it was a coastal town, people had settled there many years back for sustenance. While traditional knowledge, the knowledge of these local and indigenous people, has kept the area afloat and continuing through the years. Now, in a study of the place, marine ecologist Divya Karnad mentions how local fishermen had developed a system of rules to prevent large scale exploitative fishing gear, which they themselves monitor and enforce, imposing punishments on transgressors. For catching fish, also, for example, the locals of Sindhudurg developed a new kind of purse scene or a mini purse using their local expertise and wisdom. We understand that without traditional knowledge, even new technological developments and interventions would be difficult to implement, as the wisdom and experience of the locals would largely inform any larger initiative towards sustainability. Their satisfaction and heritage conservation ensure larger participation towards the cause, while their methods prove useful in maintaining plants and land usage. Thus, beyond the local and traditional knowledge of people being cultivated through these protective zones, the quid pro quo here is the inclusion of these local communities to manage biosphere reserves. Now, one limitation I encountered in my study was that the body of work on Indian biosphere reserves was very limited. There's not enough recent literature on the policies used to make India's biosphere reserves and their current state. Hence, my suggestions that I'll further discuss result from the broad observations drawn from worldwide biosphere reserves literature coupled with specific information that I know. Now, one of the major gaps in biosphere reserves is that they fail to account for the people's traditional knowledge and local wisdom, and rather end up becoming initiatives taken by people with no direct experience and knowledge of the surrounding environment. This is called armchair policy, and with it still in the picture, biosphere reserves cannot be a space for effective and holistic growth. The proposed policy intervention further would include the local knowledge and wisdom of the local people and indigenous communities settled there. The extent of Sindhudurg, as discussed before, is threefold. Hence, the policy for an area like that would be such that it covers coasts, ghats, and the Ratnagiri Plateau. With accounting for the biosphere reserve, the livelihood of the people and its context must also be considered in the implementation of a potential reserve. Historically, people have sustained themselves in Sindhudurg through rice cultivation and have even engaged with piracy from the Konkan coast. And with time, these sustenance efforts have shifted. So the reserve or the policy that has to come in place should be such that it does not undermine the livelihood methods that are used by local communities of past and present. Now, as discussed before, since this area was also host to Shivaji Maharaj's uh, polity and his fort of Sindhudurg, it is part of the Maratha defense legacy. The locals experience pride in their heritage and culture. So this must also be maintained and taken into account. So, by accounting for the knowledge, livelihood, and pride, such a policy step of inclusive policy would ensure the participation of the locals in the maintenance and sustenance of the biosphere reserve, which is essential to the long term sustainable goals attached to the aim of biosphere reserves, sustainability of biodiversity. No goals can be met without enthused actors or stakeholders. Now, as I mentioned before, MRC's UDS platform directly aligns with this as well. An effective UDA platform not only contributes to the management of biosphere reserves and marine ecosystems, but local communities can make the UDA nexus more comprehensive. The paradigm of ensuring sustainable growth in the marine environment must be an effort of not just technological tools and development, but also local communities. From preservation of the underwater ecosystems such as coral reefs, remote execution is required along with curation of technological strategies, and this implementation is best done by people who understand the nuances of a given space, the local people. Now, as an MRC fellow, I've come up with a basic structure in the form of a mind map of how policy should look in a biosphere reserve based off of my understandings and what inclusive policy should entail. Uh, just I hope this is visible. So while this particular mind map is geared towards Sindhudurg because I have some nuanced findings of the same, the idea is that any space or any place that we are thinking of making a biosphere reserve further needs to take into account these few points. Starting with pre-curation strategies, it is very essential to scope out the area of the biosphere reserve, which starts with the use of tools, technological tools such as CVI, which is Climate Vulnerability Index. I think it is of the need and a demand of the hour, given that climate change is in the picture. We also need to use design tools to create a blueprint of the area before making any physical changes or taking any policy steps. We also must, as mentioned before, engage the locals by taking a survey of local communities, which asks for their consent and their suggestions, and we can use that as a foundational step to further build on the reserve that we're talking about. These are the few ideals and objectives that biosphere reserves should gear towards as a suggestion from my research. They must maintain and account for traditional knowledge and wisdom of local communities, no more armchair research. They must adopt a holistic approach. There must be participatory conservation, which means that there needs to be inclusion of all inhabitants at an equitable scale. For Sindhudurg, particularly, since pride and Shivaji pride is a component of their heritage, it must be maintained. So, similarly, any specific community objectives must be brought into the picture. There also must be the broader point that biodiversity is the key aspect, and its conservation and preservation as an alignment with SDGs as a goal must be noted as well. Post reserves curation, we must also create an assessment tool that helps us gauge and analyze the progression of the said reserve. There must also be education amongst people and locals about the reserves and how to maintain them. Of course, there must be supervision and research that can be carried out biannually in the region, and there must be data collection regularly. I think it's also important to bring in the fact that an organization like UNESCO or other intergovernmental forums must be used for an efficient exchange of information, therefore, ensuring that there is inclusion of other ideas and innovation from other parts of the world, and that geographical boundaries do not bind our execution. The main stakeholders in a process of a creation of a biosphere reserve would be, in our case, at the national level, the government of India, as they're going to have a budget allocation component, UNESCO, local or district authorities, and most importantly, also local communities of the area that we are discussing. Just going to quickly go back. So lastly, I'm going to discuss the scope of my work. So here I'm presenting a three-pronged scope. The first is to locate and develop inclusive policy in biosphere reserves. The second would be to encourage implementing interventions for biosphere reserves whilst accounting for the human element. Now, this means keeping in mind the interests of the people along with other barrings such as executional ability, finances, etc. The human element is crucial here as it will ensure the continuity and birth of action taken towards policy implementation. Lastly, such a work will contribute to bridging gap in body of knowledge respecting traditional knowledge of locals as important resources for sustainable policy and present an applied lens for the same. Traditional knowledge, local wisdom, local communities, and the merits of them, along with the human element, thus become central to my cause and my study. Now, I would like to leave today's audience with a quote that reemphasizes my focus of the human element by Alison Hawthorne Demi, who essentially says that once you realize that human actions affect every bit of earth and sky, you realize that the environment isn't just what surrounds us, it's all one whole. Thank you for giving me this opportunity and your time, and have a good day.
Thank you so much, Paresh, for your presentation. Next, we move on to the last presentation of the day, which is going to be presented by Shlok Nimani, who is an MRC fellow. And Shlok will be speaking on the topic digital transformation in aquaculture. Shlok, you can take over.
Ma'am, can you confirm if audio video is fine and presentation is visible in full screen?
Yes, sure. Everything is fine. It's just that you have to make your slide on the full screen.
Yes, ma'am, I'm doing.
Perfect. Please go ahead.
Sure. So, hello everyone. Myself Shlok Nimani. I'm a research fellow at MRC. While I am doing my undergraduate in electrical engineering from IIT Bombay. So the topic of my presentation today is digital transformation in agriculture. So let's go through what we are going to see in this presentation. We will be starting with the UDA framework as well as the digital transformation, followed by the importance of APY analysis. We will be dissecting this abbreviation APY through our presentation and how this APY analysis can bring a digital transformation. Finally, concluding it with the notion of modern aquaculture, which with the vision we are seeing. So, starting with the UDA framework. So, this UDA framework actually tries to promote pooling of oceanic resources and brings the idea of research, science, and technology to support blue economy, marine planning, disaster management, and digital transformation. And our whole goal of this APY analysis is such a solution in terms of a digital transformation that will accomplish the goals of blue economy, the marine planning, as well as try to help in disaster management. So, what's blue economy means? So, as the World Bank defines, so it is the justified use of oceanic resources to improvise the livelihoods of people and create a channel for economic. So, by using our marine resources, we have a lot of brackish water resources as well as the economic exclusive zone along the coastal lines. So, we are trying to provide the rural communities which who lives along this coastal lines some kind of employment through which they can uplift their livelihood. So through we have statistics from the Indian Brand Equity Foundation that the fisheries industry in India, it employs about 2.8 crore people. 8 crore people. So that's a large number of rural community which is employed in this industry. And what our digital transformation will bring to this whole idea of this maritime industry. So this digital transformation is helping this marine industry to grow at a scale with more and more by giving more and more employment to the citizens as well as helping the our nation to grow by contributing it in economic terms. So here are the some of the objectives and idea behind the digital transformation. It includes first of all the data processing and analysis. So here by doing the real-time data acquisition and processing of the data will yield some analytics. By studying those analytics, the policymakers will be more clear about what guidelines to be released for the benefit of its citizens. Second, the process automation. So this process automation means that whoever the humans are employed in this industry, it tries to automate those inputs to the integration of robotics and intelligence. Third is the remote monitoring. This can include either the vessel monitoring, aquaculture monitoring, or the security monitoring. So here the idea is to leverage the capability of highly accurate computer technologies, which are now readily available. And some of them are like the wireless ad hoc sensor networks, which are being used by Indian military as per some sources. So those can be like used in terms of like, let's say some real-time monitoring also. These wireless sensor networks can be deployed, let's say in a pond, and the data acquisition will help to gain some analytics, which we are going to talk about later in this presentation as a part of it. The fourth is the predictive management. So this whole objective of this digital transformation is to build a framework. It's not just a concept. It's more or less a framework that tries to find all the upcoming events in the future by tracking them in real time that can affect this whole system and create downtimes. So this tracking can have the capability to generate alerts or guidelines to mitigate such events. So this whole idea of digital term is to like automate the whole thing which currently the human is and try to integrate the conventional architecture with the idea of ML, IoT, and artificial. So how digital transformation looks in the realm of the blue economy. So in terms of blue economy, the digital transformation would mean advanced data analytics, the applicability of the IoT solutions that can help to optimize the resource consumption in industries like, let's say here, energy, because we have water energy, hydropower energies being made from the marine resources, the manufacturing of a lot of things like, let's say, even seafood, and more or less many valuable products are being made from this aquatic creature as well as aquaculture. Second is the inclusive access to services. So why this, even if we see the outcomes of G20, which was under the presidency of India, So under digital transformation, the idea is to empower blue economy along the lines of human-centric development. So this digitization will help connecting the remote and undeserved communities. Why I am saying here undeserved? Because they are like kind of not they cannot access most of the information which are disseminated by the central industries, while they can do with the availability of more and more technologies with them. And this digitization, in not in terms of just IoT and ML, but in terms of healthcare, education, and financial resources, can change this complete picture. So, if we talk about the aquaculture now, as we have seen the digital transformation, so in terms of aquaculture, we have a huge scope to be harnessed. Like there is a huge potential because if we see the strengths, so we have a large workforce that can be employed, and even our geographical location favors the growth of aquaculture. While there are some weakness which we need to tackle because of the lack of digital transformation, which we are seeing the technology involvement in this aquaculture, while this lack of innovation is leading to the low productivity issue. Third, the opportunities. The whole world is seeing a rapid increase in the demand of seafood because seafood is being seen as a natural alternative to protein. So even from the Western countries, the demand is increasing. While we see for the seaweed, then seaweed is being used for many value-added products being made by the industry. So it is catering the need of a raw material for the various high-end products being manufactured. Some are the threats because of the changing climate profile and the disease outbreaks in this industry, which needs to be tackled. So why the APY analysis? So let's see the importance of this APY analysis. So here are the 4 questions. How the policymakers can know the fine details of the current aquaculture statistics of the country, and how is this aquaculture industry growing? Second, as these whole 4 are our stakeholders, the policymakers, the farmers, how they can find the best practices for the cultivation, because some farmers even don't have those kind of training programs being provided that can let them know like how to reduce the wastage and maximize the output. Third, the government, like how they can tackle which coastal regions are most susceptible to the threats of climate change. And fourth, the analysts. These analysts, by analysts, I mean those who give the inputs to the government about which policies are being important and how to demarcate the locations that are most favorable and feasible for the aquaculture expansion. Because, yeah, even from governmental perspective, the government is highly optimistic about the growth of aquaculture, and by 2027 there are many policies and schemes in place to reach those levels. So we are sure that government cannot contact each farmer to know the status. It may look cheap or affordable, but yeah, the data won't be accurate as we. So here, the basics of APY analysis, it tries to, this APY just mean the abbreviations of production, area, and yield. So this yield, area, and production gives the whole status of the industry, like how is the industry performing. So by tracking the yield, we will be able to see how productive is the industry, like is the usage of resources optimal or not. The second thing is the production. The production depends on area as well as yield, but the idea is to reduce the impact of area on production as much as possible, and increasing the impact of yield. So that way we are using lesser land usage for the same level of production. And by to achieve this yield, we will be using IoT and ML. We will be seeing how in the later. So second is the area, and why area is important because the land usage has to be governed. It cannot be like it's a scarce resource, and for a equal opportunity to all citizens, it is important that every usage of land is justified. So government should know every allocation of land under aquaculture. That way, this knowing these boundaries of where the aquaculture is located can help understand like how much more resources to be provided to those people. Third, for farmers, they can know how their farm is performing in terms of area and yield. If their yield is low, they need some input to be optimize their production and all. So as of now, under APY analysis, the idea is to formulate this yield parameter, how the yield varies with what the farmers are doing, like how they are performing. So those performance can be all be categorized in terms of a yield. So we are trying to create a map that determines the yield thing. Like whatever the farmers give, like whole inputs, it's directly converted through a map to a yield. Higher yield would mean optimal growth, while lower yield would mean the inputs are being needed to optimize the growth. So this idea is similar, and while we further see that we could apply some better models with more and more data being available in the literature. So as per the current selection of the parameters in the yield analysis, we found that the yield of every organism in aquaculture depends on how its environment is being maintained. So here you can see on the y-axis, we are seeing two different organisms as our case study of APY analysis, shrimps and seaweeds. And on the x-axis, it is the percentage weightage of these parameters affecting the growth. So let's say for shrimps, we have found 5 parameters and their respective weightages that all are like similar weightage in case of shrimp, that all these affect the growth of the shrimp in the similar manner. While for the seaweeds, there the set of parameters is slightly larger. We have the dependence of sunlight intensity, the intermittence, the color, and all. So all these parameters affect how the seaweeds will turn out. Because for seaweeds, it's important that we have a idea of its total ammonia, nitrogen, its carrageenan content, the CN ratio, and all for the uh, for its production in the value added service, value added products. So that means that by optimizing all this set of parameters, we will be able to produce the shrimps or seaweeds that are that will fetch the most returns to the farmers, because the higher quality of shrimps and seaweeds will fetch a higher rate of higher return on investment as compared to the lower quality of shrimps and seaweeds. So this analysis work, if we see some mathematical aspects, so it's the total this growth rate or the feed rate can be right as a function of all these parameters. While we are seeing a set of parameters, let's say temperature, density, salinity, pH, and dissolved oxygen, more parameters can be added with the available data. So using function decomposition and the multivariate analysis, this whole map can be created. So, if we talk about first for the shrimp case, so by combining the temperature and stocking density, we can see that the with higher stocking density and the optimal temperature of about 25 to 30, we are able to get the increase in the total harvest. Like even it can be seen that it increases monotonically from 10 to 80, the overall biomass increases monotonically. But if we try to dig deeper and find the effect of this stocking density on survival, we can find that after 100, the growth is stagnant. Like you can't expect higher biomass by just increasing the stocking density, which may not be available directly without combining the two literature works of growth rate as well as survival. So that makes this idea and modeling important, because otherwise whole idea of APY is fragmented if we don't combine this into a form of a tool. So by combining this, the farmer gets the better insights of at what temperature they should produce and at what stocking density and what is not optimal in their whole paradigm. And if you see the sustainability aspect, how APY analysis tackle that. So let's see the three remarks. The shrimp industry has become lucrative for farmers because of its large demand. And India ranks second as the producer of aquaculture and first in terms of the exporter to USA for last 9 running years. So why this is a thing? Because analysts said that the Indian shrimps are far more superior compared to other Asian counterparts. So over the last decade, it can be seen on the left table that the growth rate of Vaname is high, very high. Like it's in terms of percentage, even let's say for Andhra Pradesh, which is the highest producing state, our data shows that it's growing at a rate of 71% per year on year basis. So on 10 years, if you calculate this, so it will turn to be around 200. So let's say it's 220 or 230 times the original values. Over these 10 years, the Vaname production increased by 230 times. But the idea is most of the times this data is being seen. But on the right hand side, it is overlooked. The right hand side is the ADR data, how the area changed. So if you see on the Andhra Pradesh, the area changed by about 271, like it's in percentage. So divide by 100 for a multiplier. So it's 27,143 divided by 100 is 271. So Andhra Pradesh area under the Vaname, it increased by 271 times. So as you can see, the production increased by 200 times while the area increased by 271 times. So that shows the low productivity of our Indian farms. Like we are not harnessing the true potential. The productivity is very low, and to cope up with the production required, we are increasing just the area. That's not feasible in the long run. So here we are uh, trying to integrate our second organism of our case study, which is seaweed. So because shrimp is more lucrative, so we are trying to bring seaweed into the shrimp farms so that the farmers are more uh, favorable to like increase their productions by integrating seaweed. So why the farmers will integrate seaweeds into their farm is the idea of polyculture or the integrated multi-trophic aquaculture. So here one of the things which I include in the from one of our researches. So this mortality ratio, mortality, which means the how many shrimps are dying as compared to how many are cultivated. So with the increase of on the graph you can see with the increase of D3, G2 means the highest level of seaweeds along with the shrimps. So the mortality rate is like 4 times low as compared to D30, which means only shrimps and no seaweeds. So by that, the farmers can be favored to grow seaweeds along with shrimps because our CMFRI as well as ICAR, the director, have already mentioned that the India has potential to reach about 1 million metric tons of seaweeds while we are only producing about 34,000. So we have to somehow promote this polyculture to increase the aspect of or the production of seaweeds in the country. So how our research will help the farmers to grow seaweeds? So on the left hand side, you can see the variation of shrimp weight with temperature as a this is a polynomial function which depicts that the with the temperature how the shrimp weight you can say will vary. So we can see that about 25 to 30 is optimal for banana. While for if we see for the seaweed, the 25 is more optimal. But if we want to make it compatible, they both can work at about 27 degrees centigrade. If the farms are maintained at 27, the both can grow very optimally, and the farmers can get higher returns because K. alvarezi or Kappa ficus rhodophyta. This is highly valuable in Indian Ocean region because of its carrageenan content. So it fetches good returns for the farmers. So finally, we will be seeing how this whole work relates to the G20 aspect in the summit 2023. So basically, under the presidency of India, the blue economy was a hot topic in the outcomes of G20. So this idea of APY, you might have guessed that we are trying to build a digital transformation in terms of a remote aquaculture, where farmers can get the details about the climate change as well as how they are operating their farms. So it empowers the human-centric development because now farmers can like access their farms remotely and can have more leisure time. And if you just for the sake of a fact that remote agriculture is a huge success in US. Remote agriculture, like it is from large amount of large duration, but yeah, it's a huge success in US at least. So optimal selection that the government can now know which lands are most optimal for the expansion of aquaculture. While for the sustainable development, under the outcomes, the India have in the press bureau release, they have said that the expansion of aquaculture will be along the lines of UN SDG. So our idea of polyculture and optimization of land usage, along with the higher productivity to reduce the wastage, will help policymakers achieve the same. So this is a technological aspect. It's under development where we are building our API. The API can be interacted through an Android application. This is an Android application. We already have a web application in place. It's already produced, but the Android application can have a far more usage as well as reachability. So this also have the idea of authentication and authorization so that farmers have their data being secured as well as under the role-based model, this whole data can be shared with the government also under IFRI. So, but that was the our current work. But the vision is that whole thing comes under a digital transformation that is automated by using a ad hoc wireless sensors in water, where this APY is directly interacted or communicated using these sensors, and farmers don't have to worry anything. They can just analyze how their farm is performing, and this whole architecture this whole architecture realizes these four things: the remote farm monitoring, the real-time data acquisition, the secure data management through authorization, and the automation of climate change. Because with the sensors, we can also include some environmental sensors that track the climate change. There are certain challenges, the data being a major one in the research because of the less availability of data in open source. But yeah, we have a framework that is for the data acquisition on the farm. We are under talks with sensor firms to continue with that phase. And this is the idea of modern aquaculture. Our work lies in the IoT and ML. While computer vision is also will open doors to much more things, it's slightly unfeasible in the current domain, seeing the amount of investment which will be required and the power efficiency and usages. So our idea brings ML and IoT sensors to realize this digital transformation in the notion of it. With this, I end this presentation. Thank you for this.
Thank you, Shlok. So that's brings us to an end of the series of presentation. I'm sorry it took a little longer than we had planned for, but I'm sure you will bear with us that the research scholars have put in a lot of effort. So I did not want to stop them in between and tell them to wind up. So without taking much time, I'll request Anis sir to kindly give his remarks. Anis sir.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much, Commander sir, and thank you everyone, all the presenters. It was an amazing presentation and insights. Okay, so I would like to welcome all of you and thank you so much, MRC team and Commander sir, for inviting me. And I would like to wishing you a very happy World Maritime Day 2023. And the kind of session that I have seen, that's amazing. A lot of insights the team has prepared and shared a lot of visibility and insights about the underwater and the challenges that we have. So I know we have exceeded the time, but I will not take much of your time. And just a disclaimer, whatever I'm sharing my thoughts and the closing comments are my personal and does not resemble to my organization. So as we have seen the journey and the importance of digital transformation, the last presentation which we have seen is about the benefits and the overall insights that we are receiving. We know that oceans are changing fast and we do not have visibility of underwater. MRC and the entire team, they do a lot of research and they share a lot of statistics and insights about the marine and the underwater insights. And we know that we do not understand the how and why of changing oceans, which is changing. As we know that oceans play a crucial role in our global ecosystem and the impacts, the changes that impacts to all of us. The problem is that we have less insights into ocean inner operating mechanism and in many aspects that we have on our galaxy also. So here digital transformation, which is going to play an important role. And since we have seen some of the challenges, I have noted down some of the challenges that we have, and also the kind of benefits if we try to move to a digital transformations and we try to adopt the new technologies and we can come out from the legacy infrastructure. We understand that the kind of we can say the mindsets, all the organization culture or changes to move to a new way of working, which will give more insights and benefits, and overall it is going to help us into the sustainability. So here, according to whatever we have seen, there is a lack of clarity and the benefit that we are going to get when we move to and works towards a digital journey, adopting the new technologies. But here we are into a legacy infrastructure. Also, there is a high risk when we move to a digital platforms. We know that there is a security and data privacy, and there is a loss of data leakage. And as we know that every 10 seconds, there is one cyber attacks are happening across the globe. So when we adopt some of the digital platforms, obviously there is a risk with respect to the data privacy and the cyber attacks. Also, we have seen the challenges with respect to the budget, the investments where the organization has to put. There are many companies, including the government of India, they are focusing a lot of things into the digital India. And I'm sure over the years we can see more understanding towards the ocean network and the marine network, and where we can improve a lot of things. We have seen that there are environmental regulations also impacting towards moving to a digital transformation. The climatic conditions, the temperature, the regulations and the norms. So, the vision which we should have, we have seen that the vision is not there. Overall, also there are other challenges with respect to the technology, moving to which technology, different type of technologies are available, the resource, the shortage of resource, understanding, also getting the skills, and also there are some restrictions towards intellectual property which we have, which is also impacting the towards movement of digital transformation. If we are trying to take some technology, then the trust and accuracy and integrity, the correctness of the data is also very, very important. So where we need to have more vision, and we should have the urgency, especially to move towards digital vision, where we have seen that it's not that much great as of now. MRC and team are doing a great job in giving such insights on the Maritime Day for all of us, where the kind of team, the intern and the entire team, they have prepared a wonderful presentations, and we can see that whatever the missing talents and the missing skills that we have, with the kind of visibility that we have seen in today's presentation, I'm sure we will be able to move to the next level. And as we know that since we are moving fast, in last 3 years we have seen a lot of changes into the digital platforms, the payment gateway, the using mobile apps, the applications. A lot of things are happening. The banking transactions, the financial transactions, the trading. A lot of things are happening on digital platforms, and we have seen there are always a pros and cons, and we have seen the benefits also. So I'm sure if we are moving towards that journey, the the safety and security is going to be an important point for all of us, which is going to increase the visibility, the sustainability part, and an overall improvement of efficiency and productivity. Not only it will reduce the cost, it will also improve the agility and a faster time to the market with the implementation of digital platforms. I'm sh- I know that it is going to boost the creativity, improve productivity on the data, the kind of analytical tools that we can use. We can use a lot of automations of tasks. Obviously, there will be a investments, but also there will be a cost optimizations. And the current, as we know, that the AI and machine learning, IoT, cloud, all these are the journeys to move to towards digitalizations. And the chat gpt, the gen AI, I'm sure everybody has heard that gen AI is a type of machine learning that can learn the patterns and properties in a data sets so deeply that it can generate creative new variants inspired by the original. And the content can be any type of data, text, images, videos, and many more. So the technologies that we can use with ocean and underwater informations, it is going to help us and overall improve, help us to sustain the environment that we have. It is going to help us on the sustainability and overall security of the nation. So that with that, these are some of the thoughts and closing comments from my side. With that, I will hand over to Dr. Das. Uh, Thank you so much, sir, and wish you a very happy day.
Thank you so much, sir. I really appreciate you having spending so much time, and we will continue our interactions with you on
Sure,
how to
sir.
take it forward. So thank you so much. So I hand over to Sridhar for the vote of thanks.
Thank you, sir. As we draw the curtains of this illuminating webinar, allow me on behalf of the Maritime Research Center to to express a profound gratitude to everyone who has contributed to making this event a resounding success. A heartfelt appreciation goes out to Rear Admiral Amit Vikram and Mr. Anis Pankania for honoring us with their esteemed presence. Today, through each presentation, we have journeyed across diverse facets of our maritime domain, gaining deeper insights and understanding into its multifaceted aspects per se. Our esteemed fellows have artfully presented projects that effortlessly blend technology and policy, spanning we've been spanning across areas such as marine spatial planning, uh, geopolitics, sediment management, biosphere reserves, and of course aquaculture as well. Indeed, while each work stands unique, they also converge, exemplifying the intricacies and interdependencies of the vast maritime domain from which we derive so much. So the Indian Ocean, vast and majestic, it's not just water, it's the embodiment of history, culture, and the enduring spirit of exploration. And we hope on the occasion of World Maritime Day, we have done justice to every aspect of it. With that, I hereby conclude the webinar. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.